There's just something about drive-in movie theaters, right? It's like a time machine back to simpler times.
Yeah, and it's funny how these relics of the past are really making a comeback.
Totally. And tonight, we're going to explore exactly why that is as we take a deep dive into the allure of the drive-in.
Should be fun.
And to do that, we're going to focus on a really special spot, the Long Prairie Drive-In up in Minnesota.
I've heard good things.
Ooh, it's the real deal. I mean, where else do you hear about someone bringing an entire love seat to the movies? They even have a classic car show.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Right. Talk about feeling like you stepped into Greece. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's rewind a bit. I think a little drive-in history is in order.
Drive-in history 101. I like it. And, it's important to remember that the first drive-in actually popped up way back in 1933 in New Jersey.
Wow, 1933. That's like the heart of the Great Depression.
Right. Can you imagine? The country's in the middle of this huge economic crisis, and someone comes up with the idea of watching movies from your car. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
It really is. And it really speaks to just how much we crave entertainment and escape, even when times are tough.
Absolutely. And think about it. This is 1933, right? So sound technology was still pretty new. Can you imagine the challenges those early drive-in owners faced? Trying to make sure everyone could hear the movie over their engines and everything else going on.
I bet. I mean, those early sound systems were pretty clunky, right?
Oh yeah, some of them even had individual speakers for each car.
Wow, that's wild.
It took a lot of ingenuity to get those early drive-ins up and running.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were willing to go through all that trouble, it just shows how special the drive-in experience was, even back then.
And they were clearly onto something. By the 1950s and 60s, drive-ins were the place to be, especially for teenagers. First dates, family outings, hanging out with friends under the stars.
It was an experience, for sure.
It really was. And it wasn't just about the movie itself. Drive-ins became like social hubs.
They were community centers, especially in smaller towns.
Absolutely. They offered the sense of community, something that, I think a lot of modern multiplex theaters just don't quite capture.
Hit the nail on the head. It's just a different vibe.
It is. And, speaking of capturing that magic, the Long Prairie Drive-In seems to have cracked the code on keeping that classic drive-in spirit alive.
I'm ready to hear more about this Long Prairie magic.
Oh, trust me, it's magical. But before we dive in, what makes Long Prairie so unique?
Well, for starters, they seem to get it. They get that nostalgia factor.
Wow.
The moment you pull in, you see that giant screen, one of the largest in Minnesota, I might add, and you're instantly transported back in time.
It's like stepping into a time capsule.
Right. And the music, forget those modern movie soundtracks. They're playing classic 50s and 60s hits from the second you arrive.
They really commit to the theme.
They do.
It's like they're curating a whole vibe, and not just playing a movie.
Exactly. And Long Prairie gets that. They really lean into it.
Oh, yeah.
They have these classic car cruise nights.
Get out.
Yeah. Rows of these vintage cars, all polished up, gleaming under the stars. It's like a scene straight out of American Graffiti.
Okay, you had me at vintage cars. I am so there for that. I bet those car owners get really into it.
Oh, absolutely. It's really about the shared passion. People connecting over a love of cars, that bygone era.
Yeah.
And of course, the drive-in experience itself.
It all comes back to community.
It always does.
It really does. And, they don't just stop at the classic cars either. Next weekend, they're hosting a trunk or treat event.
Now, that's a great idea.
How fun is that?
Yeah.
Families can deck out their cars for Halloween. Kids can trick or treat from car to car.
You know what I love about that? It's just so family friendly.
Yeah.
It's affordable fun, especially with the price of movie tickets these days. And there's that element of safety and control for the parents, too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kids are contained. You've got your snacks. You've got your space. It takes some of the stress out of a family outing for sure.
You have officially convinced me to check this place out. It sounds amazing.
You won't regret it.
But hold on. Before we plan our road trip to Long Prairie, we have to talk about something vital to the drive-in experience.
Let me guess.
The concession stand.
Hit the nail on the head. The aroma of the popcorn popping, the sizzle of the hot dogs. It's a sensory symphony.
There is something so nostalgic about classic concession stand fare,
Totally. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's not about gourmet sliders or artisanal popcorn or anything like that.
It's about those classic comfort foods.
Right.
Like it's part of the experience. I bet they have those giant sodas with the bendy straws.
Of course they do. And that's another big difference between the drive-in and your typical megaplex. It just feels more authentic.
Yeah.
Less commercialized.
I agree. Okay, so we've covered the history, the vibe, the events, the snacks. What about those of us who've never actually been to a drive-in?
Okay, good point.
Any insider tips from the research?
Definitely. So those front row spots, prime real estate.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll have those speaker poles you can clip right to your car window.
Wait, really? I always thought you had to tune your car radio in.
Oh, you can totally do that.
Yeah.
And at Long Prairie, they use 88.5 FM for their audio. But those attachable speakers are a nice option if you're close enough. And if you've got a classic car with a less than reliable radio, they rent those out too.
Oh, that's good to know. What else should we pack for our drive-in adventure?
Well, I mean, comfort is key,
Yeah.
right? Think foldable chairs, because you know those car seats can get a little cramped after a while. And blankets.
Blankets are key.
Oh, yeah. It gets chilly when the sun goes down.
Oh,
And layers.
good call.
Yeah, dress in layers, because you never know what the weather's going to do. And a little bug spray doesn't hurt either.
Especially as it gets later. It's funny. We've been talking a lot about Long Prairie. But it's funny. As much as I love geeking out about, like, all the cool stuff Long Prairie is doing, I think what's really resonating with me is something a little bigger, you know?
I get.
Like this whole deep dive, it's been about more than just drive-ins. It's about these shared experiences, disconnecting from the digital world and reconnecting with something more like human, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
It makes you think about all the other places and experiences out there that offer that same kind of magic. It could be a local concert, a community theater production, even just sitting around a campfire with some friends telling stories.
It's about finding those pockets of joy and connection in everyday life.
So well said.
Just those moments that remind us to slow down, appreciate the simple things, and really savor the company of others.
Yeah. And as we wrap up this deep dive here, I think the biggest takeaway is that these moments and experiences, they're out there. We just have to be open to seeking them out.
Exactly.
You know, you might just find yourself transported back to a simpler time, or maybe you'll discover a whole new appreciation for the present moment.
Who knows?
And on that note, we'll catch you on our next deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those drive-in dreams